Welcome to Medacast, our podcast all about the long ago show now, about 20 years old, show Medabots. Our guest for this episode is Rob Tinkler, known for playing quite a few characters, but probably most notably Spyke, Cyandog, Krosserdog, and how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm super
Thanks for
excited
coming.
about this. Rarely do people ask me about Metabots, but
Yeah.
actually Metabots, it means a lot to me because it actually is one of the shows I started writing on. I started out as an actor on it, and then I actually approached the producers and was like, I mean, you read enough scripts, you sort of go, I can write one of these.
Yeah.
And so I went up to the producers after we recorded, and I said, "Oh, can I write an episode?"
Hmm.
And their faces just like went ashen, and they looked scared, terrified. Oh my God, the actor wants to write. What do we do? What do we do? And their eyes darting, and I'm like, I'm picking up on it, but I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna ride this up. I'm gonna ride out the discomfort.
Hmm.
And they were like, well, why don't you write a spec script for us? And for those of you who don't know, a spec script is like a sample episode. You don't get paid for it. It's like basically saying free.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, as a writer, you'll write a spec script for an idea that you have that nobody's bought yet and you want to sell. And this was free work for them. So I wrote it, and they're like, "Well, do this episode. Like, we'll let you know. We'll let you know." But it's a pretty full roster right now. And so I wrote one, and they were like, "This is great. Do you want to do another one?" And then they just kept going. And then I moved to the States, and I was working on it when I was in LA, and it was a really fun time. So I was able to it was my first experience being on both sides of the studio glass, and the recording side and the writing side, which gives you insights into, you know, you're like, oh, how do as a performer, you read a script and you're like, well, why would they say it that way? And oftentimes in anime, it's it's adapted
Yeah.
from Japanese. So sometimes they do what makes it what fits. And so I have become a stickler when I'm working on an adapted script for like making sure the ins and outs fit, the sentences are closed. Sometimes this is a classic thing. Am I talking too much? I've already started. I'm talking way too
Oh,
much.
you're all good.
Okay. That'll happen. Just say shut up if I keep
Oh,
going, or if you're like, okay, this is getting a little boring. But they will do like, they'll be like two, clearly the original Japanese will be two sentences, and they will just put a pause in the middle of the sentence. They'll be like, I wouldn't do that if I were you shouldn't go. Like, they'll even like do a run-on sentence, and it makes me nuts. Bad dubbing makes me nuts. Bad script adaptation makes me nuts. And it's usually the script adaptation, because they get a direct translation from Japanese into English. Then they go, this doesn't flow. We got to make it flow. And then they end up like, we'll have like mouth flaps. They'll fill with like laughs at the end of a sentence. You shouldn't do that. Ha 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 ha. And it's like, he's not laughing. He's not laughing. But
yeah.
so those things always made me really nuts. And so I have become a stickler, and I'm on a show, and the scripts are, and I'm like, you guys need to spend more time ahead of time, because you'll save time in the studio when you're recording. Recording costs a lot of money because you're on the engineer's time. But anyway, that was my first experience. I love it though. It's fun. So it actually does mean a lot to me. I mean, it means, look at this. Look at this. I got a little
Nice.
toy. A little toy. I got one in the package that I haven't taken out in 20 years, and one out of the package that I play with.
Yeah.
That's my Cyandog.
Yeah. It's
Um,
it was a it was a real like fun show that I think, at least like in New Zealand, it hit at the perfect time where kids were just like into it. They wanted the toys, they exchanged the parts off them. They were all over the place. What was it, I guess, like working on Medabots? Were you in the studio with other people? Were you recording individually?
no, we tended to record individually. You go in, you do your thing, but and they basically, there are several different ways that they can dub. One is I can't remember, what did they do? Did they do beeps with they have beeps where you're like just listening for beeps, and then you start speaking and you're watching the screen as you try to match lips. And then they have other ones that are more like a karaoke system, where it's like, the words sort of light up and the words go by as you, and so it's, you're trying to follow with the words, and that's sort of fun. And then the old way that they used to have, I did Sailor Moon. That was like my very first voice gig. And they would have it on a film, like a movie film, but clear. And it was handwritten in cursive so that they could stretch out like, have you so you could really match the, and that was accurate, but the pre-production on that was super expensive, very time consuming. You needed somebody with good handwriting. But yeah, like that was like how we started there. But I've done all different sort of systems, but it is fun. The show I'm working on now, Bakugan, they record, we're kind of doing it simultaneously with Japan. They record first, obviously, but like even before it's released, they send us the episodes, we dub them, and so it's like almost simul released. But they have an amazing system where they have a big studio with like 7 people in the room, whoever's in the scene, and they're holding their scripts, and they all just sort of dip in to the mic. They dip into the mic and dip out. Dip in, say their line, and dip out. Dip in, and none of them are wearing shoes, and they all just sort of like, it's like beautiful. It's like from the side, it looks like this, and it's like this motion thing. It's incredible. We don't do that. We're not magical like that. We just go, and now I'll say my line, and then try to fit everything in and get it done before it stops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you voiced multiple characters as well.
Yep.
And I guess with Spyke and Cyandog, right? You're communicating.
We were a
with
team.
Yourself.
We were a team, and Spyke was like super loyal to Cyandog, and he always like put in the monkey medal. I don't know, that thing destroyed Cyandog. Ultimately, he became Krosserdog, but I don't know what Spike's thinking. Like, he just wasn't a very bright guy, but he was earnest. He was like one of the, of the team that he was on, the bad team, the Screws under Samantha. He just was always trying to like impress Samantha, and like, he's such a little toady, and but it was fun to sort of then go shift into Cyandog, who was a little bit less emotive and more matter of fact, and be, he's like, "Are you going to kill me this time?" But it was fun. The direction was really good. It was one of the better anime shows that we worked on. Toronto has a pretty good, I know there's like Toronto, Vancouver, and then in Texas, I guess Funimation, they have a little pocket of talent there, and they do a bunch of shows. And Toronto sort of fell out of favor for a little while because I guess we kind of blew it. I was not a part of that. I say we as in the royal we. And so it took a while to get back. I guess Spin Master, which is a toy company, made a deal with a company in Japan to produce toys and to make shows. And so it really feels like a co-production, unlike a lot of shows where you kind of come across it years later. Like when I first started doing Bakugan, the first season of Bakugan, I think that had been already on the air for like 3 or 4 years in Japan, but this feels new. And Medabots felt a little old. It was almost like at a time when they, you get these producers who go to Japan, find these shows, find these little nuggets of that they knew would translate, and that it would work internationally, because not everything does. And they knew it had like a, an international feel, and that kids would just love to play it. They would love to play it and watch it, and then watch and play what they watched, and that sort of thing.
If you've got the 2 characters in the same scene, do you record all of one and then all of the other, or are you jumping between them?
I initially they would be like, okay, we're going to do all of Spyke, and then we'll do Cyandog. And then, I think on episode 3, I was like, can we just, and they're like, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah, I have no problem shifting gears between voices. They were concerned about voice bleed, that my Spyke voice would sound like my Cyandog voice, and it would just sort of shift. But I was able to differentiate it through, pitch and tone, and making it more, making some of Spike's reads more staccato, so that the character separation felt more specific. But I liked it. I liked it, and I liked it because I got out of there faster. I mean, I love playing the characters, but I actually like getting out of the studio as fast as possible. If I can do something in 20 minutes, like, I like that. That's what I like.
Yeah. Did you obviously you got the toys, so you watched the show back after it was all finished?
A little bit. You know why? Because I don't think it aired. I was living in LA at the time, and I don't think it aired in LA right away. And so I wasn't really able to see it. I saw it when I would come home at Christmas and things like that. Occasionally, I'd be able to catch a glimpse of it, like with my nieces and nephews, and then they'd be like, "No, let's watch something else," and I'd be like, "No, but it's hard to argue. I'm on this show.
Yeah.
I'm on this show. Don't you want to hear my voice?" And they kind of look at you like, "No," and I'm like, "I can hear your voice right now." Okay, you'll understand one day, or maybe you won't, and that's probably for the best because it means you got like other things going on.
Do you typically watch back stuff that you're in? Do you try to avoid it?
Yeah, I kind of try to avoid. I mean, I've gotten used to it. There was a time when I hated it because you're like, I don't know if you've ever experienced this where you like hear the sound of your own voice and you're like, huh? It's like you feel like you sound all bassy, and then you hear your voice and you sound all high. Like you're like, what? My voice isn't that high, because it's resonating inside your head. And so, but I got over that pretty quickly. But I some things I don't mind. Some things I do mind. Some things I don't have the time. Now I've got kids, and I try to get them to watch shows that I've been on. And sometimes they're interested, and sometimes they're not. Like I guess they're watching Bakugan right now, and it's on Netflix here. And but like other shows, The Day My Butt Went Psycho, which I think was a co-pro with Australia. Anyway, they had no interest. They're like, but I play a butt. I'm the butt. I'm Deuce the butt. We don't care, Daddy. It's like, all right, you'll be doctors and lawyers.
They're more important.
Yeah, more important things.
Yeah, because I know I played, it was the first 2 episodes of Medabots recently for my, 10-year-old cousin. It was a couple of months ago. And, he was still
into it. Does it hold up?
Yeah, he was still in. The quality, in terms of, the image quality, was probably the only thing that... But the writing, the acting, and everything held up for him.
Was it widescreen, or was it just squared off?
It was squared.
Yeah, of course. That's usually that's immediately my kids are like, this is old, isn't it? And I'm like, yep. They're like, because you can see the black bars at the side of the screen. But I find those things do hold up, and it's because they're so beautifully animated, and they're and yet there's such economy with the animation. They'll really play on stillness, or they'll just have one frame beautifully painted, and they'll push in slowly on it, but that evokes more emotion in the characters and things like that.
You've played I'm going to use air quotes around hero with Spyke.
Yes.
and a villain with Cyandog, both on Medabots. Do you prefer playing the sort of good guy, the bad guy?
I don't know. I'm torn. You know what? But I like, Spyke is, I guess he's a hero. He's not a hero. He's
middle ground. Great.
Yeah, middle ground. But I've played straight ahead heroes, and they're not so interesting because you just got to keep your voice really straightforward, and everything is good. And come on, we can. Well, actually, no. I was Jinga Hagane in Beyblade, and so for that, but they were actually taking me down. They're like, okay, he's you're too energized, and I'm like, yeah, but look, because I'm looking at the artwork. I'm following. Look at his face. He's his mouth is bah, bah, bah. And they were always like, no, but he's cool, and I'm like, okay. So in terms of energy, villains are way more fun to play because you can, really play with the hills and valleys of your reeds and really be evil and come up with evil laughs and things like that are so fun. But so I've given the 2, but then the heroes, everyone likes the heroes. Everybody likes, they like the heroes. So I don't know. I'm split.
Yeah. Both.
I'm agnostic in that regard. I just go, okay, well, I do like being able to play villains and heroes on the same show. That I love because it's it's like a gear change. You just it scratches a creative itch where you just feel like you come out of a session where you've played good people and bad people, and you're like, it's Miller time. Now I've felt every emotion I can feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You obviously Medabots ages ago. Sailor Moon back there as well. Bakugan, Beyblades. The list goes on for the number of roles you've had. How has the voice acting industry changed since back then?
How has it changed? It hasn't. It hasn't really changed all that much. Well, I think the parts have changed. They're they obviously and rightfully so made more parts for people of color and women, starting with women and then more people of color, which is like, yeah, that's for sure how it should be. And so it's changed in the writing in that regard, getting new voices, new creators, and things like that. But a lot of the system, like, okay, so this is like the Newman U87. I just got this, and I was looking it up, and it's been around since the 60s. They haven't changed it since the 60s. So, and I wasn't around when they were recording on tape. It's always been digital since I've been around. So there hasn't been a sea change. It hasn't really been a shift. I'm told when I run into the really old voice actors, they're like, the money used to be great. Now it's not great. And I'm like, it's okay. I don't know the difference. So, but there's something beautiful about it. It hasn't really changed all that much. And it's so simple that even through the COVID pandemic, everyone's working at home. I'm working at home. That's a change, I guess, that I'm working at home, but it's the nuts and bolts of it haven't changed. The animators have all been sent home, but they can work from home. And that's the beauty of it. I think we're going to see a lot more animation in the coming months, because that's the one thing they can't open a film studio and have live actors intermingling with each other. And so, but we can still animate and people can still record on their own. So, yeah. I don't know what drew you out. Let's turn the tables.
No.
What drew it was Medabot. What was your first experience with anime? Like, what was your first show? Like, what did you first start watching?
I think it was all around that same time. So there was Medabots, there was Battle Beat 'em On,
okay,
and weirdly Tokyo Mew Mew. But it's like whatever was on Sunday morning in New Zealand,
right?
And that's just you caught it, you enjoyed it, and it was different. Medabots was funny, and as a child that tickled.
That's the writing.
Yeah.
That's the writing. I tried to make it funny. That was the thing. I was like, we can make these characters funny. We can make them wry. We can make them sarcastic. We can say things. We can say the same thing. There was some things though that they had me change. They're like, we can't do this in North America. There was an episode that was a marriage date where this older businessman was dating somebody quite a girl that was young, and they were like, we can't just have her showing him around the library. No, the museum. Show him around the museum. I was like, okay. But that was, so, but generally speaking, you try not to change too much, to affect too much what they did originally. And I think Japanese companies got more like, no, we don't want to change too much. Keep the names. Like before, I think years ago they would anglify the names, and now well, even Spyke had his name in Japanese is like Iwo or something like that. So then I guess they were looking for that one syllable mouth flap name, Spyke. Mouth flap. It matches Spyke. You're Spyke. That sounds tough. That sounds like a little weaselly. So go for it. Yeah, it's amazing. I remember seeing anime for the first time and going, what is this? This wasn't Super Friends, this looked really good, but the mouth matching, I was always like, how come they're not saying the words right? Why aren't they saying the words right? I'm talking if in a line that they make an O, I tried to find a alternative so that to match the lips. Like you try. You don't always. Sometimes it's just you know, this is the banana the gorilla has handed you, and so you deal with it, but you try your best.
You're fixing, I guess, the mistakes that you saw when you were watching it. You're trying to improve it and make it better.
I remember watching, like, what was I watching? Like maybe Astro Boy or something, and being like, this does not match. This doesn't match. Like it's just, he's not. People don't talk at that speed. They don't They don't do that. And it bugged me, but I still was compelled by how beautiful it was, and even the sound of the voice. Like I like the quality of the voices, but I guess I was always drawn to animation. I was always listening to voices, and like when I'd watch old Looney Tunes cartoons, Bugs Bunny, I could tell when there was a cartoon with Mel Blanc, and when there was like Joe Alasky. I was like, no, it's close. No.
Yeah. If we're looking back and we're going, do you remember a specific line or scene or something that you really enjoyed during your time with Medabots, or something you wrote maybe?
There was like one. I actually put it on my demo reel because I loved it, and I wrote it and I loved it, and it was like this, you know, it was the classic, you know, episode, like closure of the episode as it's slowly fading out. It was like Spike like begging Samantha to like just totally bootlick, like just can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do this? What about that? Boss! And then like fade to black, and I just loved that. And I was like, I'm putting that on my reel. But I've since updated it because Square.
Yeah, that's the downside.
Yeah.
Just stretch it and blur on the sides.
Yeah. But it was a fun voice. I haven't used that. Sometimes, you know, you try not to do the same voice twice. You're like, okay, that voice is retired, but Spike was peripheral. Maybe there'll be a little hint of him in some other characters. Who knows? It's been 20 years.
Yeah, you can bring him out at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
Outside of Medabots, across anime, across cartoons, all of it, do you have a favorite project that you've worked on?
You know, one of the very first series that I did, original animated series I did because I started dubbing, was a show called Sam and Max Freelance Police. It was created by Steve Purcell. It was based on the games, and it was, I think, done through Fox Media, and I can't remember the other company that was involved, but it was, the writing on this show was like, I was like, oh, this is great. It's so funny. And even like on Twitter, people, fans of the show, fans of Sam and Max, find it on YouTube. You can find all the episodes on YouTube, and they track me down. Or I just see random clips of like some of the funny, really super edgy things that the characters said. He was just a really great, fun character, looked really cool, big white rabbit, big teeth, like big toothy smile. And I've still sort of kept in touch with the creator, Steve Purcell. He was when I was in California, he was at Pixar, and so he was working on, I guess this was a few years ago, but it was The Brave. And so he gave me a tour of Pixar, and I was like, it was sort of like our careers had both like sort of gone. And so it was really nice to see that and now they're coming out with the toys. Oh. So I've ordered those. Toys. So that is probably my favorite, and that predates Medabots even. That's Square. On YouTube, that's Square. Not rectangle, Square.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked that. There's so many fun things. Like, you know, there's ones that have for younger kids that I've done, like Cat in the Hat knows a lot about that. I'm the thing 1 and thing 2 and Fish. And that's, you know, been going on for like 12 years or something. And that's always really good fun. Lots of characters. Cyberchase, which is actually a PBS show. It's like math based. I read the scripts and I'm like, I don't understand what I'm teaching today. So I'm glad I'm doing this episode because I'm learning at the same time as I'm teaching. As a voice actor, not a mathematician.
No.
But fun characters that are like based on like, other characters I've seen. I'll hear a voice, I'll hear something, I'll hear a voice and I'll be like, oh yeah, like there was an old show, an old sitcom called All in the Family. It was like even before my time, way back. But I remember like my parents, my grandparents watching it. And it had this old couple, Archie Bunker and Edith. And I remember the guy, my counterpart on Cyberchase, he sort of sounded like Archie Bunker. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to be Edith. I'll be Edith. And so I'm like, I do this voice like this. Oh, Archie, And he's like, oh, that was good. And I went, Edith and Archie Bunker. And he's like, oh, I know that. And so then he pushed up the Archie. And they had no idea. And then the show had been on for like 3 years. And then the producer's like, I don't know, how'd you come up with those voices? I was like, they're Edith and Archie Bunker. Haven't you noticed? And they're like, oh my God, no. What? Oh my God. It's crazy. There's a new show that I'm doing, Alien TV, that's really fun. The character's like my version, an alien gibberish speaking version of Leslie Knope, Amy Poehler from Parks and Rec. So sort of like very earnest, and I'm playing a reporter, and it's all that's I think on Netflix. I think that's on Netflix Down Under. Because or Sky, is there Sky TV? Do you have Sky?
Yeah, we have
something.
Sky.
Yeah, Sky. So I think it's on Sky because it started airing there, and it starts airing here in North America in August 11th or something like that. So yeah, no, there's lots going on. It's a great way to make a living. I highly recommend it. You can wear your jammies to work, especially now.
Yeah,
I would just show up in my jammies. They'd be like, okay, that's a little weird, but okay, we don't have to see you. But now I'm like, forget it.
Nobody ever sees you. It's fine.
No.
And I think you are working on a couple things at the moment. Outside of that, you got a podcast, graphic novel stuff.
Yes, I got. Okay, so I did this podcast last year. It was like a Christmas podcast. I wanted to do this again. Make your own stuff. I wanted to do a feature film. Wrote this feature film called 8 Tiny Reindeer, and then I got impatient because you got to sell it and get people to buy it and stuff like that. And so I'm like, I'm going to do it as a podcast. I'm going to do it as a 24 episode podcast that gets released every day through the month of December. And it ended up being a big success. And I was approached by a publisher called Kids Can Press, who they're like, let's do this as a graphic novel. So I'm like, great. So that's what I'm working on now. Authoring stuff, which is a new evolution in my career. And since COVID's been on, I'm at home with the kids, and I'm in the studio a lot, and they're like, Daddy, what's going on in there? What are you doing? I hear you yelling. What's going on? I'm like, get in here. Let's do this. So we came up with a little concept. It's called Kids of the Future, and it's another narrative, like situational comedy. It's a dad who's visited by his 2 children from the future. They come back from the future, basically to fix him of all his faults, so that they can actually be born. And it's my kids' voices are really cute and sweet, and they've enjoyed the process of learning how to do voiceover. I've really enjoyed teaching it, and it's really fun storytelling. So you can find that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, all the places, all the usual suspects. Yeah.
How long until both your kids have a reel?
If they showed an interest, they've showed an interest in this, but they want to do this. I have other friends who are actors who've gotten their kids want to do it. They want to audition. I brought my kid along. He was homesick, maybe because he wasn't feeling so great, but he was homesick. And so I had to bring him to a gig, and it was a really quick gig. It was like a 2-liner thing. And they were like, put the headphones on him. And they put the headphones, and he went up to the mic, and they're like, do you want to say a line? And he was like, no. So not so interested yet. But I'm not so keen to push it on them. They like the storytelling. They like subjecting me to painful things, which is what always happens in every episode. I get lit on fire or fall out of a treehouse or get attacked by rabid raccoons or something like that. So it's a very, and they like that aspect of it. But if they did want to, we would work on a demo reel. But they don't even want to listen to Daddy's cartoons.
Yeah. Well, maybe if we reboot Medabots, 16:9 rectangle.
That's it. You trick them that first episode. You do like the tinny theme song. It's going, and then you widen, and then it comes into stereo and Dolby, and then you're like, it's back but better. Do that.
Yeah, and you'd be down to redo your voice stuff?
Oh, 100% if they'd have me. For sure. Oh, God, yeah. It'd be amazing.
And I guess if people want to get in touch with you, you got social media?
I'm on social media. I'm Instagram, herocomplex.ca, which is also the name of my website. And I'm at Artoons on Twitter. So those are the places to catch me.
Sweet. Well, thanks a lot for having a chat to us today.
Oh, this has been the best time. I'm sorry that I just talked at you for an hour.
Oh, no, it's been super insightful. Like,
okay,
all the
as long as I just hope people came away with something like that they can now go and apply. And look, if you have questions, voiceover questions, shoot me a message on Twitter. I'll try to, if it's a quick answer, if I can point you in the right direction, I'm very happy to do that.
Sweet. Well, have a good day, and hopefully you can record some more voice gigs soon.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.